joined the Focus on Outcome stream. I'm your host, Daniel Walters. I talk about all things software product development. And this is my first solo stream. The last couple of streams, first one was catching up with Colin Powell, and who I worked with many years ago. And he is an excellent product manager and product leader. And then most recently, I was chatting with another ex-colleague of mine who I work with at Seek, Barar Burgley. And we talked about the difference between sort of customer experience teams and platform teams, and also using hypothesis-driven development. So today is going to be a little bit more freeform. I thought I would cover content I've been covering in my blog as a starting point. So let me just pull up a few things. If you're viewing, let me know that you're there by typing in the comments. It would be great to hear from you. If you've got questions that you would like me to cover, then feel free to put your question in the comments. In the future, I'll get a audio Discord going so that there can be some voice chat. I guess my vision for this over the long term is almost like a radio call-in program, almost like a telephone or something like that. So that would be pretty cool if I can work out all the engineering wizardry to make that happen. Certainly all the AV engineering behind streams has been really interesting to learn, but I am absolutely a novice in that area. Thankfully, by comparison, I'm far more experienced in software development. So I've been writing a blog for the last 6 months. I mean, I've been blogging longer than that, but for the last 6 months, much more focused on a key set of themes or 3 lines, which is talking about building software products where sort of the first order of business is getting really clear on what your outcomes are. And this approach, which, you know, is by no means unique to me, has been an approach that I've landed on after a couple of decades of experience, where, you know, traditionally we would focus very much on, you know, what was the work we were doing or the output. And there were, of course, you know, elements of vision and goals, some of which were outcomes, but the predominant focus was on the how of what we're doing and the output of what we're doing, and less focused on the outcomes. But over time, when we're, you know, doing our sort of continuous improvement reviews, as we're looking at what we can improve, it became clearer and clearer that focusing on outcomes would be the more efficient way of working. So I have been writing that on my blog, and let me see if I can. The last time I shared the screen, I crashed my entire browser. So if I disappear for a few minutes, it's because that's happened. Let's have a look and see what happens this time. That's looking a bit better. Brilliant. So I've been publishing on Medium. If you go /Wiota, that's WIOOTA, then you will you'll see my blog. Good to see that my sister is online. Emily, thank you for your support. There you go. That's more visibility than I suspect you were planning on. So the first post that I published on this blog was talking about a new orthodoxy. And so I entitled it, "A New Orthodoxy Awaits Us." Now, what I meant by a new orthodoxy was really about this shift from, the way we describe the work that we're doing, being very focused on the how, shifting towards the what and why. And this whole theme I've described as the focus on outcomes. And it, I think, is the next sort of horizon in terms of this is the way that work is happening on the fringes at the moment of the industry, but seems to be growing in leaps and bounds. And so feels like the right thing to do, to share what have we been experimenting with, what, based on our work experience, is working well, based on what we've tried and what's worked and what's not worked, and then sharing details about how we're working. And so that's what this post introduces. So check it out, medium.com/Woyuta, and it actually, a new orthodoxy is sitting there in the navigation, so that's easy. And so when we're talking about working with outcomes as sort of the first order of business, then we're often talking about goal frameworks. And probably the most common approach to goals in software product organizations are OKRs, which have been in the ascendancy for the last number of years. Now, they've been around for longer than that, but the sort of popularity that we saw with the growth of agile software development, OKRs seem to be following that same trajectory. And agile practices and OKRs seem to be a very complementary set of approaches, in that being clearer on what you're trying to achieve, particularly if you're in an organization which has multiple teams responsible for delivering value through software, or even better, multiple cross-functional groups collaborating to deliver the organization's overall value, then OKRs are a good fit to support the alignment, and also to support those teams adapting as new information comes in, where more static planning may have worked against the sort of adaptability that you might expect to see from agile teams. So that is a very complementary set of practices, and that is also why a key section I've written about in my blog is about how to write great OKRs. So we can see here a number of posts I've got focusing on writing great OKRs. There we go. Oh, thanks, Emily. There we go. We've got the actual URL there for those visual of you. So there we are, medium.com/Woyuta. I might take a quick tangent here. you may notice of all the things that I publish, or on all the social media platforms. You'll find me at /Wayuta. That harkens back to myself and my cousin, as probably like 5 or 6 year olds playing computer games at our grandparents, and me trying to show off and write my name, which is Daniel Walters, very quickly into the high score table. And I ended up writing Danny Wayuta, which I later in life continued to use on high score tables, and shortened just to Wayuta. Why did I do that? Well, when you sign up for different platforms and you need to put a short name, it was shorter than my name, and it was never taken. So it's been pretty advantageous from that reason. But unfortunately, always requires this explanation to go along with it. So I'm talking about the series of posts I've got in terms of writing great OKRs. I've got a lot more to write on this topic, particularly in terms of when there are multiple teams with multiple goals, and how goals can relate to each other across organizations. There's a lot more I've got to write on that. But for right now, there are quite a number of posts which are covering detailed ways of how you could approach writing an OKR that can maximize the amount of alignment that a team can have, because the clarity of what you've written is as clear as possible. So looking at some of the themes here, we've got the theme of thinking in terms of outcomes. So again, you can see the through line between focusing on outcomes and goal setting. And basically, I have the thesis, and again, it's not uniquely mine, that you could write your goals as in terms of the how, like, you could write them as in terms of, a particular project or initiative that you want to do and those sorts of things. And certainly many businesses, probably even the majority of organizations, write their goals in that way. But that approach, and I cover this in these posts, that approach limits the amount of adaptability that you could have, because it's starting with the presumption that a project that you're going to do is the right solution to the problem that you're trying to address. And so if you've got that sort of assumption built in, then the frequency where you have the opportunity to actually adapt what you're doing is far less. If you contrast that with the approach of defining goals in terms of outcomes, that is, if we think of, we want to achieve some sort of positive change for our customers, or a particular user group, or, could even be, you might be wanting to achieve an outcome for an internal user group, then you are generally defining, a goal as an outcome. So it might be, I'm going to just use an example from my previous workplace, Seek, where it was a job board. It might be, candidates can more easily apply for jobs, or something very general like that. And then we may have some more specific measures or key results that we're defining that would actually represent what is symptomatic of achieving that outcome. So, we could pick leading indicators, or we could pick lagging indicators, but we're going to pick things which are actually, if we're having some success towards achieving our outcome, then we would see movement in those indicators. So if you've been if you're new to OKRs and you want some really practical, advice on how to define them and ways to, or steps that you can take to defining goals that are clear, then working your way through these posts will definitely help you with that. I also cover some of the side effects that you can have. So some of the pitfalls when it comes to goal setting as well. So they're again practical advice that you can use when setting goals with your teams. There we go. One other sort of pitfall, and let me just drill into this article. So I mentioned earlier about defining goals in terms of the how rather than the what or why. And, this has been something I've been thinking about and, often tweet about. So on the 25th of August, I tweeted, a significant problem with planning around solutions rather than outcomes are the artificial constraints that get unthinkingly applied. Interestingly, once applied, people seem blind to them. Blog post to follow. And it did. True to my word. So what I meant by this is when you've gone down this path where you get quite invested in, we're going to have initiative A and it's going to achieve this wonderful thing, and we've got initiative B and it's going to achieve this wonderful thing, then all of the assumptions that you had at the time are already baked into those programs, and they get reinforced if you've made those your goals. And once that's established, the initiative and what it's meant to achieve become sort of interchangeable. So you lose that subjectivity. But because it is sort of interchangeable, making the case that an initiative may not be achieving what it set out to achieve can become more challenging, because like, well, no, that's why we're doing it. We're supposed to be achieving this, and you're like, yeah, but it's not happening. We're not actually we're not seeing that translate into the outcomes that we're looking for. And so that's a really interesting sort of side effect, because it can then make it even more difficult to course correct. So I write about that in this post. Cool. Let me just check in on the comments before I continue on. All right. Excellent. Yes, get that popcorn. I hope it's real. This would be even easier if I had a dedicated engineer. One of the topics I talk about very frequently is the dangers of multitasking, and in being both the presenter and my own AV engineer, I'm breaking my own golden rules. So, but you get into engineering because you like a challenge. You'll see across the navigation, I've also got another theme I wrote about. So with the advent of the pandemic, so a key part of my role before I finished up was actually responding to the pandemic. So I was holding a set of responsibilities that wasn't just the software product development, but I also was responsible for the CIO responsibilities. That is all the IT infrastructure and things like that. And so with the global pandemic, we had to shift our business, basically do digital transformation in as quick a time as possible. And for us, fortunately, because I was not a terrible CIO, I was at least an average to good one. We had invested in the infrastructure and cloud and other resources that enabled us to do that transformation quite quickly. One of the bigger challenges was in bringing our sales and service teams, from being a very in-office phone-based, sort of style of working to utilizing things like soft phones and other technology so that they could continue working from home. Our software product development teams were already routinely working remotely, so that was less of an issue. But as a predominantly sales and service organization, we had quite a big challenge with 1,200 people to move to remote working. So what was interesting about that and what inspired me to write this series of posts was that I saw, it was still interesting that it took the pandemic for us to shift, towards remote working when clearly it had been technically possible for quite a while. So that was interesting because that could have been a flexibility that we'd been offering to, not just our software product development teams, but also our sales and service teams for quite some time. And I saw that, we'd been in a good position and many companies had been in a much more challenged position in terms of their digital transformation programs. And their digital transformation programs had been, typical program length was 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and we saw some really interesting examples of universities moving to virtual classes in record time. All of these transformative changes responding to the pandemic, which sort of suggested that these things had been possible before the pandemic hit, and begs the question: if digital transformation could have happened more quickly, why didn't it? And so that's a very long way to say the idea that a crisis could teach us something, and therefore, that's how my Never Waste a Good Crisis series of posts came about. So you can get all of that and a lot more in my Never Waste a Good Crisis series. So if anyone has any questions so far, shoot them in the comments. I was guilty a few weeks ago of locking the comments so that anyone who hadn't been connected to my Twitch page for more than 10 minutes couldn't post. Hopefully I have switched that off, but we will see. Cool. So I'm going to go to another post. So one post that's had quite a bit of attention and seems to resonate with a lot of people is this one called Long-Term. Let me just wait for that to load. I'm on a limited consumer line bandwidth. I'm streaming from the corner of a small room in our in-laws' place. Hopefully, I've got some better resources when I move house. Okay, so it's long-term average pace is more than your short-term pace. All right, so I've got this diagram here. Let me just have a look and see. This may be too small on the string. Let me see if I can expand that a bit. Let's see how that's zooming in. Marginally better. Let's have a look. Probably as good as we're going to get. Let me put that up there. All right. Definitely as good as we're going to get. So this diagram is one I've drawn many times for my teams that I've worked with over the years. And eventually I got sick of drawing on the whiteboard and thought I would try my my sort of graphic design skills to actually get it into a graphic so that I could reuse it. So it's a simple chart looking at impact versus time, and we've got two scenarios. And the bottom scenario is one which I've seen very commonly with different with teams in many different businesses that I've had the pleasure of working with, both as an employee or as an advisor. But I see the same patterns. There seems to be, you know, a side effect of adopting agile practices, which skews teams towards short-termism, because I think encouraged by things like calling iteration sprints and things like that. There's almost this sense of we've got to rush to do as much as we can do that's going to have a benefit in the short term over the next whatever the sprint length is, commonly 2 weeks. And so one of the side effects of that is there are choices made which almost discount things that may take longer but have a bigger benefit over time, because they don't fulfill this requirement of having a benefit by the end of the sprint. And that can get worse over time, because that same faulty selection process of selecting only the work items with a short-term gain can have a compounding impact of either lower productivity over time or lower impact over time, because we're actually unconsciously limiting the options that we pick based on the sprint length, which has never been the intent of any agile practice. And so if we instead take the frame of success for us is what is our long-term average, and so this is where, if you look at the second scenario, which is colored in green, you can see examples where we might be picking options which don't have that same immediate improvement, but over multiple sprints where we've broken down this work and we're getting through that, we are making more impact over time because we're picking from a wider selection of options, and we are selecting options which we know are most important for positively impacting our long-term average. And so when I've drawn this diagram out for people, sometimes it, draws a blank stare. Sometimes on the third time I've drawn it out, you can see the penny drop where it's like, oh, I see what we've been doing. And to draw this back, I was talking about goal setting earlier. To draw this back to that, if we're setting, goals of different timeframes, it can be the goals around what we want to achieve for our customers, might be goals around the qualities of the experience that we want to deliver. Then by setting those sort of, rather than delivery oriented milestones, but milestones of actually where we want to get to in terms of quality and of experience and of impact, it can keep us focused on picking the options that are maybe not best for the short term, but better over the long term. So you can look at this through the lens of impact. You can look at it through the lens of productivity. You can look at it through the lens of quality. But you can see the difference in making consistently good decisions for the long term versus making consistently good decisions that for the short term. And so you can sort of see that if you're focusing on decisions for the short term, it can really put a almost this sort of glass ceiling above where your team's going to get to. Very cool. So I might leave that there. If you've watched this live or you're watching this in the reruns, drop me a note either at the blog or in the comments, and let me know what you found helpful. And if there's other topics that you want me to cover in future streams, then I will be very happy to dig into them. Also, always looking for guest hosts. So if you're interested in appearing on this stream, then please get in touch. So thank you very much. I've been Daniel Walters, signing off until next time.